Greetings and or salutations as they suit you. I'm Jacob with PsyborgAimes, and today we're talking about challenge, accommodation, and why making room for yourself doesn't mean making things easy through Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac is a hard game. That's not a complaint, that's the appeal. Roguelikes are meant to be punishing. They're meant to ask a lot of you. Attention, decision-making, adaptability, and then wipe the slate clean when you get it wrong. You play them because the challenge is satisfying. The arc of peasant to god is euphoric. When you can achieve it, at least. So when someone says a game like Isaac is too much, the interesting question isn't whether the challenge is valid, it's which part of the challenge is doing the work. As many roguelikes, Binding of Isaac lets you choose your character, then drops you screaming and naked into a dangerous world. You'll face small rooms filled with fast enemies, overlapping projectiles, and items that can radically change how you function. Sometimes for the better, and sometimes very much not. The term bullet hell often comes up here too. When so many things are moving at once, the goal isn't always to win. Sometimes it's just to find the single pixel of space where you won't immediately die. You're constantly making decisions under pressure, where to stand, what to prioritize, whether to commit or retreat. There's no gentle learning curve here. Progress is uneven, failure is expected. That's the essence of the genre. The difficulty is real, and for many players, that's exactly why it's fun. But here's the thing. Not all difficulty comes from the same place. There's the mechanical challenge. Aiming, positioning, reaction time. There's the cognitive challenge. Tracking, information, adapting to randomness, and learning how systems interact over time. Those are the kinds of difficulty most roguelike players sign up for. They're demanding, but they're legible. When you'll fail, you can usually see why. And then there's the hostile presentation. Isaac is visually chaotic, intentionally grotesque, loud, busy, and relentless. That hostility is part of the game's identity. It reinforces the tone, the themes, and the discomfort. But it also adds a third layer of difficulty that sits on top of the others. For some players, that layer heightens tension in an enjoyable way. For others, it consumes their bandwidth before the run has even had a chance to unfold. The difficulty stops being about decisions and starts being about endurance. At that point, the run isn't being decided by your positioning, or your build, or how well you adapted to bad luck. It's being decided by how long you can tolerate the environment itself. And when that happens, the challenge you actually came for, the mechanical and cognitive puzzle of the run, gets crowded out. The game is still hard, but it's hard in a way that's no longer evenly distributed. When looking at difficulty, it's worth pausing on a distinction we don't very often talk about. Anxiety versus excitement. Our bodies haven't done a whole lot of evolving in the past 10,000 years. What we have evolved is a set of extremely good threat detection systems. They're fast, they're sensitive, they're very good at keeping us alive. They're just not particularly well suited to modern life. That's part of why we notice danger more easily than safety. Why we fixate on what's wrong and overlook what's going well. If you're living in abundance, there's no urgent problem. You eat, you rest, you carry on. If you're living in scarcity, there's a very big problem. There's no supermarket nearby. There's no farm down the road. No backup plan. And as a mammal, you're burning energy constantly. So when resources are uncertain, your body does what it's designed to do. It tightens the system. It conserves energy. It prepares for survival. That's also why the presence of a bear or a tiger feels so unmistakably bad. Because without modern tools, there is a real and present threat. Your body ramps up for fight or flight because that response keeps you alive. The catch is this. When that system comes online, it reallocates your energy. Anything that isn't immediately necessary shuts down. Digestion, long-term planning, reflection, learning. When you're running from a tiger, all available energy goes into moving your legs. You can work out what to do next after you're not dead. High anxiety blocks learning because learning simply isn't the priority in a survival state. Interestingly, those same systems are also activated when you're excited. Physiologically, excitement and anxiety look remarkably similar. Elevated heart rate, heightened attention, arousal is in a general state of bodily activation. The difference comes in how the experience is interpreted. In excitement, learning stays online. In anxiety, it shuts down. The sensations of this is scary and this is challenging and fun are close enough that we often confuse them, especially under pressure. So we label both as difficulty, but they don't teach the same way. When an experience stays in the zone of excitement, difficulty encourages mastery. You experiment, you adapt, and you learn. When it tips into anxiety, difficulty shifts towards endurance. The question moves from how do I get better to how long can I tolerate this? That's a very different task. And this is where environment matters. Most games are prototyped with simple shapes, squares, circles, raw mechanics, to make sure the fun is actually there. Only after that do you layer in art, tone, sound, and presentation. Because presentation is meant to support the challenge, not replace it. If the aesthetic layer adds more strain than some players can manage, the underlying fun doesn't disappear. It just becomes inaccessible. The mechanics are still there. The challenge is still there. But instead of learning how to master the system, the player is forced to spend their energy enduring the experience itself. And once difficulty shifts from excitement into anxiety, mastery is abandoned in pursuit of survival. This is where accommodation becomes relevant. Not as a way of removing difficulty, but as a way of redistributing it. The goal isn't to make the game easier. It's to make the difficulty land where it was intended, on the mechanical and cognitive challenge, rather than on sensory overwhelm. Games are useful examples of this because they're usually strict about access. As Dara O'Brien once pointed out in a stand-up bit, a book never stops you and says, "No, you didn't understand chapter 3, go back." You can look away from a scary scene in a movie and still finish the movie. But if you can't handle the sensory hostility of a game, even one you otherwise enjoy, you don't get to continue. This is an unrecoverable failure state. Unless, of course, you make an accommodation. That's where mods come in. And no, not the kind that just make you stronger or make enemies weaker, though that can be part of it. If you're here because you enjoy the gameplay, that kind of change is often redundant. Instead, you change how the experience is presented. Same systems, same enemies, same decisions, different interface. What's being preserved isn't comfort, it's access to the challenge itself. This is the part that generalizes, because this is how accommodation works everywhere. Glasses don't make reading easy. They make reading possible. A ramp doesn't remove distance. It removes an unnecessary barrier to reaching the same place. Noise-cancelling headphones don't make work less demanding. They make it possible to spend your energy on the work, instead of on enduring the environment. In each case, the task remains intact. The expectations remain intact. What changes is where the effort goes. Accommodation is often misread as lowering the bar. In reality, accommodation is removing obstacles that were never the bar in the first place. This is functional self-compassion in motion. From the outside, this can feel like fragility. And if that's your guiding voice, why are you listening? Choosing to accommodate yourself isn't giving up. It's choosing to engage properly. Roguelikes aren't meant to be beaten once. They're meant to be replayed. And Isaac makes it very clear that this is the intention. The structure of the genre assumes repetition. Learning happens across runs, not within a single perfect attempt. You die, you restart, you notice patterns, you try again. There is cultivation of player skill, not just mechanical advantage. And that means the real measure of success for the game isn't whether you can survive one brutal run. It's whether the game invites you back. Replayability depends on scaffolding of the player's experience. Sustainability comes with the opportunity to learn, apply that learning, and come out better. This doesn't necessarily ease the challenge, but it does make it more accessible next time. If a run is demanding but engaging, you replay it. If it's overwhelming before it gets interesting, you don't. It is as distinct as it is simple. If every run drains you before the first floor, you're burning out before you build skill. Accommodation, then, doesn't remove challenge, it preserves replayability. It keeps the relationship with the game intact. It allows the difficulty to do what it was meant to do: teach, test, and reward engagement over time. And that's often the difference between "this is hard, but I want to go again," and "this is hard and I'm done." So if you've ever felt like something you should enjoy is just too much, it's worth checking whether the problem is the challenge or the conditions you're trying to meet it under. Accommodation doesn't mean making things easy. It means making sure the difficulty you're facing is the one you actually signed up for. If you've enjoyed this kind of game-based reflection, feel free to subscribe and say hi in the comments. Thanks for being here. Rest gently and be kind to your mind.